Welcome to Professor Game Podcast, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who brings the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration that help us in the process of getting the students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I teach and work at IE Business School in Madrid, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. Want to know more? Go to professorgame.com/subscribe, start on our email list, and ask me anything. Hey, engagers, and today we have somebody quite special from Sweden, and his name is Jan Bidner. And Jan, are you prepared to engage?
Always, Rob. I'm always prepared to engage.
So Jan is a gamification designer and UX, that's user experience strategist, and has worked as a consultant in the IT industry for over 15 years. He has been an advocate for storytelling, game design thinking, and user-centered design even longer than that. He has a background in acting and teaching drama, and he always brings a bit of playfulness into everything that he does. Lately, he has also been working a lot with the digital workspace, UX, and change management. Very, very interesting. He has found gamification angles in each project that requires long-term strategies, user engagement, and behavior change, which is pretty much what every implementation project requires. He is also very passionate about schools and learning and works part-time as a hospital clown. That's an interesting angle, and it brings, again, the fun that we're trying to achieve pretty often. He is active within the gamification community and also one of the founders of the Swedish podcast. Okay, I'm going to do this terribly wrong, I'm sure.
Give it a shot, Rob.
Gamificationfredag. You can watch also his fresh mini vlog, that's video log series about gamification in Swedish, Gamificationskolan, that runs in December. So correct me with any terrible pronunciation, Jan.
Yeah, perfect. Fredag means Friday, so Gamification Friday in any other language. And Gamificationskolan means gamification school, actually.
Fantastic. Great translation so that we are able to understand if we're not Swedish.
Yeah.
So, Jan, is there anything we missed from that intro?
Absolutely nothing. You covered it all. Thank you.
So let's take a look at what does a regular day with Jan look like.
Oh, to be honest, regular days are pretty rare. Feels like every day is a non-regular. And also, I sort of end up reinventing the wheel over and over again, for better or for worse. And that is mostly because I'm bored. I get bored with things. But also because I strive to find the best suitable solution for every unique problem. I am sort of what you might call a why guy. I kind of like the toddler strategy. Did you hear about it?
The toddler strategy, the kids.
The toddler.
Okay.
The toddler, they keep asking why all the time. Why do we have to eat? Because it's good for you. Why is it good for us? And you keep digging down to the bone, to the core. Of course, you have to stop somewhere because otherwise it gets too existential. But working with clients, I think why is a really good strategy.
Yeah, it certainly is. But in general, maybe not a regular day, maybe a regular week, or even a regular month. What we want to get a feel of is a sense of how your life works in that sense in the gamification space.
But could we do a sort of an ideal day instead? I mean, pretend that you're waking up early, fully rested. It doesn't happen very often, but that's the way I would like to see my ideal days. I wake up early and I have a long breakfast and reading up on stuff, mostly articles about news, articles or news about gamification, design and UX, stuff that sort of makes me think and maybe inject me with new ideas about stuff, maybe to write and to investigate or to implement in things that I'm doing. And then if I'm lucky, I spend a couple of hours designing concepts, writing, analyzing, or maybe for a client, and then having a few calls with colleagues, current or potential clients, having lunch, and then maybe biking off to the office and maybe pondering some challenging and creative problems and hatching different solution ideas and stuff like that. And tomorrow is my last day with my current employers, so there will be a completely new set of regular days after tomorrow. And in the afternoons, I might be working at the office, having meetings. Prepping presentations is something I do a lot, and tweaking them. Maybe reading something more, and hopefully start writing a blog post or something. And I usually end the day by going to the gym, or to my second job as a hospital clown.
Cool. That sounds very cool. What can you give us a brief, very, very brief explanation of what do you do as a hospital clown?
As a hospital clown, I work at what do you call it? A department, a ward, no?
Yes.
For kids. Mm-hmm. A department for kids where they have kids with cancer. So I meet them 1 day a week. Every Monday I go there and work with some colleagues and meeting the clowns. And you go around to the kids and meet them in their own private space, in their rooms, and it's not like a circus clown. It's more like a friendly clown that comes along and sings some songs and asks some questions and blow bubbles and listen to the kids. It's sort of a relief from the everyday stress at the hospital. So it's a pretty nice moment meeting the kids.
Definitely. That sounds fantastic. Thank you for such a phenomenal thing that you do. Again, whether it's voluntary or not, I think it's a fantastic thing to do, because those kids are certainly going to be, maybe not their whole lives is going to change, but those moments are definitely changing the way that they perceive their everyday.
Yeah. And there are, as you said, parallels to what we are doing. I mean, listening to people and finding out their sweet spots and trying to amuse them, because laughter and joy always adds an extra dimension to both the work and to everyday life.
So Jan, we're gonna change a little bit the subject here, and we're going to go into what we like to call our favorite fail, or our favorite failure moment. Fail as in first attempt in learning.
Yeah.
What would you say is a moment like that, when a moment where you something didn't work as you expected, or it did a complete turn and you didn't work out, and then what did you learn, and or how did you get out of that situation?
Yeah, and this is a bit tricky. Most of my life as a consultant, I've been working with the non-gamification projects, and most of my hard learnings are from those one, and I try not to repeat them with gamification projects. But I have some nice learnings I would like to share.
Yes, please.
Yeah, and I think the times when I failed the most, or when I found myself in a situation where the projects didn't work that well, was the times when I failed to manage clients' expectations. I mean, sometimes there's a lack of communication, or like wishful readings or expectations from the client, things that sort of are outspoken, and the client would just taking things for granted, or expect the solutions to behave or perform just like Facebook without having a budget like Facebook. And I recall this specific time when I ran a project where we didn't have full access to product or business owners. I mean, if management aren't on board, there's a probable risk of failure. You're always dependent on management buy-in, as you know, preferably by being an integral part of the project, but at least as someone with whom you can share your insights about what we are doing, and having him or her making decisions about directions in the project,
Okay.
But so what happened to me in this project was that my contact, the sort of a proxy project manager on the client side, ended up being someone who filtered information and turned out having a completely different agenda than the team. We were working as a team, and he basically didn't really understand either what we were doing. And one time when we were doing a demo with the product owner on the client side, his boss, the process owner just interrupted us and turned to this project manager, proxy guy, and said, "Wait, I told you earlier, you can't store documents in SharePoint, didn't I? And that was that. It was quite devastating for him to see him vaporized in front of us, because we had been prototyping the solution for a long time. And I mean, 75% of it was completely dependent on the fact that we were going to store the documents in SharePoint. And of course, I take part of the blame for that. And this wasn't the last time we ended up in predicaments like this in that specific project.
So
and since then, Rob, yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was going to ask you, like, that seems like a very low point, and I wanted to know what. First off, of course, I'm sure you managed to get out of the low point, but then what would you, if you approach exactly that same project, knowing that these things could happen, what would you do different from the get-go to maybe prevent or reduce the problems that this could bring?
I mean, since then, I never let anyone filter my communication with the product or process owners. These days, I get almost square and stubborn about this specific point. I mean, manage expectations is my number one takeaway from this experience, but I need to make sure the product owners are on board. Also that, I mean, I after this experience, I am always very keen on visualizing everything as a part of the ideation phase. And I also try to read between the lines and detect sort of expectations from process owners and management. And I try really hard to get everything outspoken and signed off on, or set clear limits for things so that everyone is aware of what we are doing and where we are heading and the vision and everything. So, I mean, managing expectations, I think, is really important, and communications can be really tricky. I think that is the biggest takeaway from that learning experience.
I'm guessing here as well that it's not only about the product owner, but you could almost generalize it to your stakeholders, the people who are actually making the final decisions. And again, there's many contexts for that. When it's a client, as Jan is saying, it's clearly the person who's going to make the final decision, or the person who's holding any roadblocks. If your solution includes technology, you have to talk to the people in technology, because it's not only what the boss says, it's also what's possible and within their budget and their systems, etc. So those stakeholders are really, really important. And that could be the IT person in your school. That could be the principal, if he could be stopping or letting you pass a certain initiative. It could be, I don't know, the academic director if you are in a university or a master's degree. There's many forms that person could take, but I think it's a very key learning to really understand what's the final outcome and what are the things that are possible and not possible as well in whatever project you encounter. So thanks for that story, Jan.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think visualizing is the key to get everyone on board, every stakeholder, as you mentioned.
Absolutely. And the next thing that we would like to know, Jan, is changing exactly that almost on 180 degrees. Instead of going for a low point where you had to get out of that low point, we'd like to know of some things, maybe some projects, some situation in which you achieved something that you would actually say you're proud of, or a big success that you had in gamification.
Yeah, sure. One of the things I'm most proud of and was the most fun and creative challenge in this field was when I ended up designing a tabletop game for managers in the area of hospital and hospital care for managers in hospital satellites up in the north of Sweden, actually. So this project was about attitude change towards distance care and distance care technology in specific. The problem we were trying to address was skepticism among the managers at those hospital satellites in the inlands of North Sweden. And although technology for distance care is really developed and there are great knowledge and support for it here, I live in Umeå, which is a pretty big city in Sweden by Swedish standards anyway. And this is sort of a center for hospital care within this part of the north region of Sweden. And there are great knowledge and support. But there was a great skepticism among those managers anyway. which was based on fear of dehumanizing care and technology failure, and also from own bad experience, and also of tradition and fear of the unknown and change. So when I did this pre-study, the input from the client was either we think we would like to do like a simulation kind of game like The Sims, or maybe even a board game. And though we ended up with the solution with 0% digital tools in it, it was kind of perfect for the context. The managers of those hospital satellites met once a quarter for a conference day where they always did some kind of learning experience, like lean. If you heard about lean, Toyota, they do lean management exercises.
Yes.
Where they had these teachers, like game masters in this context, where they were calling shots and facilitating this lean management exercise, almost like it was a game. So from this context, we thought that a Euro game sort of solution would be a perfect fit. You know, managers playing a strategy game with resource handling and addressing that actual context of, should we hire another doctor, or should we maybe use technology for distance care? And it was a great conversation starter. And in my opinion, it was a perfect solution for that context. So, and we had the luxury of having the clients involved in this process. As I said, management involvement is really crucial in these projects, because they started out with this huge idea about making a Sims game, and we were lucky enough to be able to do this pre-study to elaborate the context, and we found this, I think, perfect solution for that.
I think that's a fantastic story, especially because even though you seem to be quite a technologist, you realize that not always it has to include technology, and you were able to flip the coin and say, well, you know what, in this case we can do it without technology, and it could work great as well.
Yeah, and I did this with I had a solo company at that time, and I could hire whoever I liked to do this project. So I had a lead designer who was an experienced game designer. I had an illustrator, and us three worked really together, real tight with the client. And I think it's still in use today, nearly 4 years later. So I'm very proud of that.
Can you tell us what the game board was about? What the whole theme was, or how in general how it worked?
Yeah, it was sort of. Did you ever play a board game called Stone Age with the resource handling, and you have to manage your farm, or having more wood and more fish and everything like that?
Okay.
Sort of like a Settlers of Catan is sort of a resource handling game as well. But this was in the context of, as I said, hospital care and distance care technology. So you could play as you run a small hospital satellite, which you hired staff. You get this staff cards with employees. One is a doctor, one is a nurse, and then you also get a budget, and you can buy a distance care technology or hiring people, and your choices made the strategy for how many. The main objective was to treat as many people as possible with the resources at hand. So that was the challenge. And as they used different strategies, they could see that, of course, it was playing in the hands of what the clients wanted to prove, of course. But it was also a conversation starter for the managers to talk about distance technology and their fears and stuff like that. And if we're talking about failure, one of the things that we failed a bit with this game was that we were doing the play tests with the doctors and the client, the managers who were ordering this, and they were a bit. I mean, they wanted it to be super realistic, everything. So even though we had the possibility of maybe playing with how things work to even start more discussions, they wanted it to be correct. So we ended up in sort of should we do more like a simulation of what it could be, or an exact simulation of what it is. So that, I think it could have been a better game, but it was a good conversation starter anyway.
That's fantastic, Jan. And in that same sort of spirit of these things that we've been talking about, can you tell us of whatever, I don't know if you have some sort of process when you approach one of these problems, what do you do? Do you have a process? Do you have a series of steps? How do you do it?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot, about my process, and I must say my first love when it comes to gamification and gameful design was Octalysis. That was my first fix, you could call it, and also Mashevsky's player types and stuff like that. And when I started off, I thought that gamification was something completely different and magical, and in a way it is, because it adds the core drives and the emotional side of being a human, and the gameful and playful side of it. But today I tend to view the problem more from a rules and mechanics point of view. I get more hardcore game design about it. What is the core loop, and what are the rules and mechanics in this situation? And even though the magic still quite hasn't worn off, and even if I tend to turn to Octalysis now and then, and to the user type Hexad and stuff like that, and I mean the player journey is, I think it's crucial to know where you are in the process. But today I tend to use the same process that I use when I take on any development or change project. I mean, the user-centered perspective is crucial, I think, in any design process. So design is the main word here. And if I should try to describe it, I often start off by helping the client defining their business objectives. There is this terrific model called effect mapping or impact mapping that I use a lot. It's like a pyramid where you identify what you want to achieve in this business area, the big why. I keep asking why, as I told you. Why are we doing this? And what is the change that we want? Often derived and refined from any project directive you get from the client. And also trying to find what the indicators are. What are we going to measure? How successful we've been when we have done this change project? Have we been achieving the goals that we set out to do? And if the goal is, for example, increased engagement, not a far-off goal when it comes to gamification, then you have to decide how to measure that. What is this engagement in this context, both before and after? You could talk about how many visitors you have, or how many that does this specific action in a site. And then you identify who you assume are going to be or produce these effects. The target group or groups that you should engage with, and that should engage with your service more and create the effects. And then you define what you think they need to be able to do to create these effects. And lastly, you decide how you're going to support that by creating those new engaging features and game mechanics and dynamics and whatever you need to drive their engagement. So what's different then when we apply the game thinking perspective to this? Not much, I would say, except that maybe we let ourselves think of the users as players with a range of different possible moves and incentives to act. I mean, I see the player as more active than a user. So that is what my concept of a player that differs from users. And also, we think about the core drives when we design, and about relevant, applicable game mechanics or dynamics. And also we might look at our service in terms of a game concept. What are the playable parts, and what do we need to remodel? What are the rules that we need to create, or strengthen? Maybe there are rules already that we need to sort of underbuild more to get the right kind of friction too. Because that is always something with gamification, that it's not necessarily lowering the thresholds as in UX and design. Maybe you should add some friction to the design as well.
That makes a lot of sense. That's a very straightforward process, and I think it's something that most of us can apply. I won't say easily, because in the end the result and what you get from it is where all the work goes into, but easy to understand and easy to implement in that sense as well. So thank you for that process, Jan.
Could I add something?
Yes, please.
Just a little to that. Sorry, I get so excited about this. I want to add that to me, gamification isn't just a quick fix. It's a long-term strategy, as I'm sure you agree, Rob. But I want to stress this. If clients are looking for something like adding fun or a gimmick or even a game, that is probably not for me. Fun might be, I think, a solution to some problems, but we need to know what the actual problems that we are trying to solve is about before we try to add the fun. Otherwise, the fun might just be adding distractions, right?
Absolutely, and then understanding the objectives is fundamental. And
Yeah.
Again, I completely agree with the whole strategy side of this. And however, I just wanted to add a small thing as well, that it depends on what you're looking for, because your strategy could be, for example, one of the things that we do at the business school is we create learning materials for a session. So if your learning is for a session, that's not necessarily a strategic move in the sense that it's something that will be impacting them for years. It might be something that impacts them for a few minutes, but it changes fundamentally what you're trying to look at, and that's where it makes complete sense with what you've been saying as well. It's about the objective. What do you want to achieve, and make it coherent with that. So you have to really figure out what are those things. So I completely agree, Jan, with what you're saying.
And I mean, also, if it's a marketing campaign, it's a one-hit wonder. It's fine. But if you are building a long-term relationship or creating habits or stuff like that, you need to think about the long-term strategy as well.
Exactly. Just a quick break before we continue. Are you enjoying this podcast? If you're listening through a podcasting app, please subscribe and rate us on the app. This will be of great help to reach more engagers so we can change the world together through gamification. And now, Jan, we're going to move into this sort of second part of the interview, where we're more into the sort of the quick answers and ideas that you might get when you listen to these questions. And the first thing that we would like to know is if there's any sort of best practice or anything that you think almost any gamification project would benefit from doing, from thinking about. Is there any such an element or idea that you would include in, again, almost any gamification project?
Yeah, just what we've just been saying, I think. I mean, you should spend more time identifying the real problem that we are trying to solve. Don't try to be so quick to just find a solution, but really try to understand the problem. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. Making sure that what your solution, you and again, this comes from a talk from Andrzej Marchewski as well last year in Gamification Europe in 2017 about solutioneering. So don't look for a solution to a problem which still doesn't exist and maybe will never exist. So you're designing a solution for something that is a problem, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, of course, there are sometimes best practices, but you always have to understand how to address the problem, I think.
Exactly. And Jan, what would you say is your favorite game?
Oh, that is really hard. I have like 10 favorite games, but if I had to pick one, it would be pinball, I think, for the maximum feeling of flow.
the pinball, the traditional one, you're hitting things. Wow. We actually, I just arrived back from Gamification Europe when recording this interview. We actually had in the place where the whole everything was happening, there was a pinball upstairs where you could go and play during the conference as well. So that could have been very enticing for you, Jan. I'm sure next year we'll also have something similar.
Yeah, but I also like. I like concept games like Monument Valley. It's called. It's not value, because of the atmospheric and mind blowing. I mean, this. Have you played it? Monument Valley. It's for the iOS, I think. It's like Escher, Escher who makes this impossible staircases that goes around each other.
Yes.
Have you seen those paintings? Yeah. And like riddles with very nice music and stuff like that. So that is a favorite as well.
That sounds very, very interesting. And giving it a spin, is there anybody that you would like to listen to in an interview like this one in Professor Game?
Yeah, actually, I have three names if I can plug them all. Yeah. Did you do Sebastian Dedering?
We're in the process. Hopefully, it will be a future episode. So yes, sort of, but he hasn't been, so it's a very good request.
Yeah, I think he's one of the sharpest tools in the box. Did a little work with him as well in a project. And since I am from Sweden, I would like to recommend two other fabulous Swedes, if I may. One is a brilliant colleague of mine at Insert Coin, where I'm starting Saturday is my first day. But actually, I'm starting Monday. Adam.
Yeah, I was going to ask if Saturday was a thing in Sweden, because...
Yeah, I can't wait to get going. But anyway, his name is Adam Palmqvist. Adam Palmqvist. He wrote this book, The Gamified Classroom, the first of its kind in Sweden. I think that would be straight up your alley, Rob.
Yes, it sounds very, very interesting. I think the Palmqvist is what sounds familiar. But if other than that, I'm not sure if I've heard of him before. And the book also sounds familiar, but I wouldn't put a face to that name yet.
Yeah, and also I would like to recommend Elin Nilsson at Umeå School of Business, Economics and Statistics. She holds a postdoc scholarship for her research on digital interaction, AR, social media, and gamification in one. She is really super smart and really crisp around her approach. She is also a true advocate for gamification. And I think you could learn some new things and get fresh angles from her. So that is my third recommendation, or second Swede. Anyway.
Sounds very, very, very interesting. And if you have, I'm guessing your colleague you will be in contact quite frequently. And with this postdoc researcher as well, if you can help us get in contact, it would be a boost to get them in even faster.
And I think that's what the field needs, more research. You had Dr. Marigo Raftopoulos. Yes. Is that the right pronunciation of her last name? I think she is brilliant. She brings so much to the field with her research.
Oh, you have to listen to or see her video at Gamification Europe. It was a full 1-hour keynote speech about her latest research. So you'll probably find it very enticing as well.
I will.
She always has what some would call a pessimist angle of what's going wrong. But I do think that is very important as well. We need to know what we're not doing right, or maybe not we as in each one of us individually, but we as an industry, what we have to stay away from, what we would like to avoid as well. I think it's very important as well to have that perspective.
Absolutely. And
it's backed by research, so it makes a lot of sense.
I mean, this field has been criticized a lot, and we have to take that seriously. We have to wash some of the bad will off, I think.
I think we have to do it both from a research perspective and almost from a marketing perspective, I feel. I do think that one thing, just getting into complete tangent here, that we haven't done as a field is use gamification to promote gamification as a field, as this is something that you should be looking into if you haven't, and why you should be looking into. And that's where I think also research comes in, because there's a lot of science that's going on behind this, many good things that have been done, and again, that's something else that I like to do in this podcast, is bring successful examples of things that have been done. That's something else that we could also be adding into the field. It's not only about people who are writing great books, but not everybody will get to read a full book about how gamification is great and what are the results. I think that there's sort of I don't have the answer yet. I haven't even thought about it either, but I do think that there's an effort missing there, and maybe entities like the GamFed, like Gamification Confederation, could be one of the places to help out on that aspect.
And I think what is happening right now in the community, adding more research, like Lennart Nacke and Gustav Tondello's research on the user type Hexed, for example, and also I'm joining this company now, Insert Coin, which is a Gothenburg-based company. My colleague Adam, which I was talking about, he is doing postdoc right now, doing research on our platform, because we have a platform at the Insert Coin, and I think we need to prove what we are doing. We need to be able to be exact about what we can achieve by using data and analytics and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And in that sense, Jan, is there any book that you would like to recommend to an audience like ours, like the Engagers?
Yeah, sure. I have there's one specific book I have had a lot of practical use of, the Sprint book. Are you familiar with it?
I think, but I'm not sure.
It's the Google Venture guys, Jake Knapp, I think his name is, and another guy as well. They wrote this sort of handbook for running a design sprint in 1 week from ideation to a finished prototype that has been tested. I think it's a fantastic way to, just follow that book and you will have a perfect process of doing design, and then add some gamification thinking to that as well.
Fantastic. That's Sprint. That's a book. You will always find all of these links and all these things that we've been mentioning in the show notes. So please feel free to go to that, to professorgame.com, where you'll find all of the show notes and details from this episode. And Jan, what would you say is your superpower when you're creating gamification?
I think I should say
your sweet spot.
Yeah, coming up with really weird ideas and out of the box ideas. Ideas that maybe I'm quite spontaneous when it comes to designing when working in a team. But ideas that might seem a bit weird at the start, but in the end tend to, when the rough edges have come off, adds personality to a solution.
And I'm sure you've learned a lot from your clown school as well, and all that improvisation that comes from that. There's a lot of creativity that comes through from that. So it's
and another superpower from that comes from that is I'm really good at reading a room or a team and listening in and adjusting things. Adjusting to the context. I think that is another superpower.
So it sounds like a superpower of a speaker in a conference as well. So I hope to see you soon speaking in one of the conferences I attend to.
I hope too, Rob. I hope.
So finally, we have still a few minutes left, and I would like to know if you have any approach to this question from the audience. This question is coming from somebody called Attila Nagy. I hope I pronounced your name correct, Attila. If not, please correct me. And this person, Attila, says, I am a volunteer coordinator at an event organizer for NGOs, supporting people in need, dealing with waste management, reuse, etc. So his question is, what kind of gamification techniques can be used for motivating volunteers and supporters targeting possible investors? That's, if there are any good examples, what differences there could be between applying game design for a business versus an NGO, especially when talking about employees versus volunteers and supporters. Do you have an angle to that?
Is that about putting pressure to the beneficiaries that they're addressing? Or?
I would interpret again, because I read you the question almost fully, is that he's talking about engaging the volunteers, so sort of employee engagement, but with people who are there voluntarily.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I think the social mechanics are great when it comes to volunteers, and the meaningful aspect to it. Giving some feedback both on what your peers are doing and what they think about things in this volunteering situation. Peer pressure, and also the purpose of doing this. It's a really good purpose, and using the purpose. I've been involved in a gamification solution where we work with habits and behavior around energy consumption behavior, and repeating stuff and getting feedback about what you're doing and what kind of sense that makes in the big picture.
That's fantastic. Thanks. I'm sure Attila will be happy to have a lot more direction as far as his question went. Finally, Jan, we're just about to finish the interview, but I don't want to let you go before first. If you want to have any final quick piece of advice for the engagers, then of course, how can we continue to connect and engage with you, whether on social media, your webpage, let us know where we can find you, and then of course we'll say it's game over.
Yeah. Any way you like, you can connect with me. I think Google me, tweet me. I'm Jan Bidner at Twitter, but you can also drop me a mail at jan@insertcoin.se.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your time, for all your insights, for all your expertise that you dropped here and left us a lot to think about and to use in our future designs. Thanks for your time. But now it's time to say it's game over. Engagers, it's fantastic to have you here. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Jan. Are you using Instagram? I'm finally posting regularly and would love to connect with you there. Just like on Twitter, my username is @RobAlvarezB. And before you go on to your next mission, would you like to know about fast learning and gamification? Then you have to listen to Keith Lilico next week. So subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.